They never wanted you to see this footage. Because once you do, nothing looks the same again. A crime was caught on camera, yes, but this isn't about what you think. It's not just blood on pavement or sirens in the night. It's about a symbol encoded in violence, broadcast to millions, orchestrated with chilling precision. What you saw was a man bleeding. What they saw was a ritual, a message. The nation gasped, but they knew you would. That was the plan. Behind every headline that spiraled across your feed was a script older than your country. Fear, outrage, division, and beneath all of it, control. You were never meant to ask, who benefits when a nation is emotionally hijacked? See, history doesn't repeat itself. It's engineered to. And every era has its sacrifice. A death that shifts attention. A moment so traumatic, it short-circuits reason. They don't hide the truth anymore. They hide it inside trauma. They know that when your nervous system is overloaded, your logic shuts off. And what's left is imprinting, programming. You don't think anymore, you absorb. And what you absorbed in that viral moment was poison. The footage was real, but the meaning wasn't. Not the way it was fed to you. Because if you strip away the emotion, if you stop and look, you'll see echoes, patterns, like a fingerprint, left by a hidden hand. The streets were red, but the ink was centuries old. This crime wasn't just caught on cam. It was staged in the deepest shadows of collective manipulation. Ask yourself, why did this story dominate? Why now? Why with this footage? What law? What executive order? What international deal slipped through in the silence of your outrage? You watched the clip. You shared the rage. But while your attention was caged, something ancient moved forward unchecked. This isn't just about a man killed. It's about a spell cast through blood and screen. Violence is a virus. Tragedy is trance. And now you're here. And what I'm about to show you next will tear through every lie they taught you to call reality. They told you it was justice, that the world needed to see it. That exposure equals truth. But exposure without context is just weaponized sensation. And they've mastered it. That footage, looped endlessly across every platform, wasn't just reporting. It was ritual theater, a public execution, not just of man, but of your clarity, your sovereignty, your inner stillness. You think you saw a crime? No, you saw a signal. Every second of it was calibrated. The angle, the timing, the reaction. Viral doesn't mean accidental. It means engineered. That clip spread like fire because someone poured gasoline on the fuse long before the match was struck. This is what they do. They build pressure, unrest, tension. Then they detonate the moment. And when it explodes, it doesn't just shatter glass, it shatters minds. Your psyche fractures, and into that fracture they insert the story they want you to believe. And the worst part, you believe it was your own thought. That rage you felt wasn't born in you. It was triggered, pulled from you like a weapon from a holster. You became a soldier in a war you didn't even know had a battlefield. Because that's what psychological warfare looks like in the modern age. Not tanks, not bombs, but images, viral loops, emotional contagion. And the elite, they sit in rooms so quiet, they can hear the effect echo seconds after the clip hits your timeline. But here's the piece they didn't count on. You're not asleep anymore. That tension in your gut isn't just reaction. It's memory, ancient memory. Something in you knows this has happened before. Not just once, over and over, across empires, across regimes. A man publicly punished, a crowd incited, a people divided, and always a new law, a new control, a new leash wrapped tighter around the neck of the free. So I ask you now, brother, who gains power when people are in chaos? Who writes the laws when fear drowns reason? And who burns the past while you scream about the present? This isn't justice. This is design. This is psychological engineering so precise, so perfected, it moves like myth, disguised as reality. You think you know what happened that day. You don't, but you're about to. You ever wonder why some footage goes dark, while others burn to the internet like wildfire? It's not just what's captured that matters. It's what's allowed to be seen. In every age, The gatekeepers of perception choose the images you'll remember. They don't fear violence. They fear uncontrolled narrative. And when a lens captures something useful, something that can be turned into a cultural weapon, they let it loose. Viral, global, undefeated. But what about the others? The footage that never sees light? The body cams that mysteriously fail? The surveillance right before review? You think that's coincidence? You think technical glitch is a natural occurrence in surveillance state? No, it's selection. And selection is power. What you saw wasn't a spontaneous eruption of truth. It was a scripted unveiling, a deliberate release at the perfect hour, to ignite exactly the response they needed. Rage, division, identity fracture. Why? Because a divided people cannot see their captors. While you argue over race, over rights, over blurred banners and chants, the architect of your emotional prison sit untouched, because they gave you an enemy you can reach, while they remain invisible. But not to everyone. Throughout history, the greatest empires used spectacle to pacify the masses. Rome had gladiators. France had the guillotine. America, we have live stream trauma. Emotional theater is policy. Despair is programming. And always, always, a camera point at the moment that breaks something sacred in you, because they need you broken. Whole men cannot be controlled. Whole minds cannot be colonized. So they fracture you emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. And then they sell you the glue. News cycles. Hashtags. Protests carefully tolerated. Because controlled dissent is still controlled. They'll let you scream as long as you never see the puppeteer. And here's the twist they pray you never realize. The crime you saw, the tragedy you mourned, it's real. That's why it works. They use real blood to sell the illusion. They're not faking the wound. They're faking the meaning. You were shown a symbol, not told it was a symbol. But deep in your bones, you felt it. Now ask yourself, who made the symbol? Who chose the moment? And why does every revelation leave you feeling more powerless? Unless you turn around and look into machinery behind the screen. Keep going. You're closer than you think. There's a reason you feel like something's off, even when everyone around you pretends it's normal. It's because you're seeing the edges of a system most men never glimpse. And those who do are either silenced, ruined, or awakened. The crime that shocked the nation wasn't just about loss. It was about possession. Not of property, not of life, but of narrative. The power to define what's real. Who's guilty, who's innocent, what justice even means. They turned the camera into a wand. And with one viral flick, they cast a spell so deep, it rewrote the identity of a nation. But let's step back. Look at the timeline. Look at the timing. The moment the footage exploded, what else was unfolding in the background? Stock markets realigning. Global deals shifting. Executive orders sliding under the radar. Entire cities reshaped through fear. And what were you focused on? The loop. The endless, brutal loop. They didn't just film a death. They turned it into a sacred sacrifice, broadcast through every screen like a modern crucifixion. Not to enlighten, but to enslave the emotions of the masses. This is old magic. Ancient. They knew how to do this before television, before cameras, before language. You think human sacrifice died in the jungle? You think ritual ended when science began? No, it evolved. Now it looks like politics, like protests, like documentaries and viral reels. But the essence is the same. The binding of the soul through the spectacle of death. And you felt it. That tension in your chest. That despair. That helpless, boiling rage. You weren't watching a video. You were participating in a rite. A nationwide initiation into fear, division, and obedience. They didn't ask your permission. They never do. But they need your energy, your eyes, your outrage, your clicks. Because this system doesn't run on laws. It runs on attention. Control the focus. Control the meaning. Control the man. But you're starting to slip through the cracks, aren't you? You're seeing things you can't unsee. Questioning stories that used to lull you to sleep. Good. Because once a man sees a ritual for what it is, he can never be used the same way again. The next layer? It's darker, but it's real. Do you remember where you were the first time you saw the footage? That cold jolt in your chest, the disbelief, the slow, rising fury. That wasn't just emotion. That was initiation. Because what you saw wasn't just an event. It was a psychological breach, a forced entry into your subconscious, where symbols become commands and commands become belief. The architect of control understands something most people don't. Humans aren't logical. We're mythological. We don't remember facts. We remember stories. And whoever writes the story controls the soul. That camera wasn't there by accident. Its angle? Chosen. The slow, suffocating footage? Left raw, unedited, uninterrupted. Why? Because trauma needs time to etch itself into memory. They didn't just want you to see it. They wanted you to relive it, again and again, until the scene branded itself across your psyche, until your nervous system curled in submission. That's not justice. That's conditioning. Every generation has its trauma anchor. One moment so loud, so raw, that it becomes a reference point for everything after. Pearl Harbor, JFK, 9/11, and now this. But ask yourself, why do the same patterns always follow? Public mourning, widespread outrage, cultural collapse, and behind the scenes, silent legislative expansion, new agencies, new powers, new controls. They weaponize your empathy, and they weaponize your confusion. Because while you're asking, how could this happen? They're already writing the next act. Understand this. The ruling class does not fear violence. They manage it, direct it, funnel it. They know that when the people erupt, they can tighten the leash under the guise of keeping order. Order from chaos. It's not a slogan. It's a doctrine. One older than the Constitution, older than the church, older than the pharaohs. And if you think this is all about race or class or one corrupt officer, you're still stuck in illusion. The truth is more terrifying. This is about ritual control. The engineering of mass response through planned tragedy. It is not spontaneous. It is not random. It is alchemy, performed through screens, sealed with blood, and powered by your attention. And every time you watch, every time you replay, you don't just witness it, you participate. So ask yourself now, what part of your mind was claimed that day? And who owns the story playing behind your eyes? They always tell you to never forget, but they never tell you what exactly to remember or why. That's not an accident. It's a program. The footage, the slogans, the trending hashtags, they're not just reactions, they're reinforcements, mental anchors, repetition until belief forms without question. It's not about truth. It's about installing a new operating system without you ever noticing the download. And if you felt foggy since that day, if something you dulled or fractured or felt less yours, that's not weakness. That's the effect they wanted. A broken man is easy to redirect. A man emotionally exhausted will beg for protection and forget he was once free. But what if I told you this goes far deeper than modern politics? What if I told you this method, the trauma, the spectacle, the emotional hijack, has been used on mankind for thousands of years? Because it has. In Babylon, it was public stonings. In Rome, crucifixions. In medieval Europe, the hanging tree. All public, all intended to be seen. Not just for punishment, but to etch fear into the soul of every onlooker. Today, it's live streams, police cams, body footage fed into a digital coliseum. The death is real, but the distribution is strategic. It's not about justice. It's about spectacle with intent. You weren't just watching a man die. You were watching a nation get recoded. Symbols override logic. They go deeper than argument. And when a symbol is seeded into collective pain, it becomes a totem of control. That footage, it became a flag for a movement, but also a leash for society. And behind it all, the same few hands. Silent, patient, always profiting when the world burns, because they own the accelerant. This is what most men will never understand. The moment you see the ritual, you're no longer under its spell. But if you feel it and don't know what you're feeling, you stay trapped, haunted by a myth written by your manipulators. Ask yourself, Why are the same images shown to every child, every teen, every man, over and over? Why are your darkest emotions tied to someone else's lens? Because this is a war for your perception, and perception is the root of belief. Change what a man sees, and you change what he is, and now you're starting to see. They don't just control what you see. They control what you feel when you see it. And that is a deeper kind of slavery. Most men think chains are made of iron. No, chains are made of emotion. Fear, guilt, rage, hopelessness. Wrap enough of those around a man's heart, and he'll police himself. He'll beg for cage. He'll kneel before the very system that broke him. That's the genius of psychological control. You don't need armies when you can program reactions. And that's exactly what they did the moment that footage hit your screen. It wasn't a crime you witnessed. It was a trigger, and your nervous system responded exactly as trained. You felt the horror, the injustice, the heat of it all, and you identified with it, internalized it, became part of the trauma loop. But here's what they never told you. Trauma isn't just a wound, it's a doorway. Every wound is an opening, a fracture in the mental armor. And into that fracture, they pour the new story, the one they want you to believe, the new identity, the new enemy, the new set of commands. It's not just propaganda. It's initiation into a worldview that serves the architects, not the awakened. Why do you think every generation gets its own televised trauma? Why do you think schools replay it? Why does every network echo it? Why do artists, corporations, and politicians all sing in perfect harmony after it happens? Because trauma resets the frame. It reshapes the soul. And those who control the trauma control the rebuilding. But there's something ancient stirring in you, isn't there? A resistance. A voice you haven't heard in years. Maybe ever. The part of you that's done being toyed with. That doesn't want justice bought with obedience. That knows. Freedom begins the moment you reclaim your inner world. And I want to speak to that part of you now. Because the deeper we go, the more dangerous this gets for them. And more powerful for you. So if you're still here, I want you to do something. Type this in the comments, twice, like a seal on your transformation. I see the ritual. I break the spell. I see the ritual. I break the spell. This isn't for engagement. It's for identity. Now, are you ready to go deeper? Because the next layer is where names get named. They've always hidden behind institutions. Not masks, not shadows, structures. That's the first great lie of history. That evil is committed by lone madmen, rogue actors, accidents of chaos. No, the deepest corruption hides inside order. Bureaucracies, boards, councils, foundations with smiling logos and bloodstained charters. You want to know who profits from your pain? Follow the structures that grow stronger after every tragedy. After every national trauma, the same pattern unfolds. A new department, a new surveillance bill, a new budget increase for protection. But who's protecting you from the ones writing these rules? You think governments are in control? No, governments are managed. Politicians come and go. Presidents change. The script stays the same. There are advisors who never leave. Donors you'll never meet. Names you'll never hear in the evening news. Men who don't care about party lines because they own both sides. When the crime hit the screen, they didn't flinch. They watched, measured, waited, and then, like clockwork, they moved the pieces. They sent experts to frame the narrative. They bought airtime. They activated bots. They lit fires from a distance and then offered the extinguisher for a price. And you were told to pick a side, left or right, black or white, victim or oppressor, always a false binary. Because while you were arguing, they were expanding. They fed you outrage so you wouldn't see the deeper truth, that the system isn't broken. It was built to be this way. The institutions you were taught to trust, education, media, law, are not neutral. They are filters, designed to shape the story in favor of power. Think about it. Why do some voices vanish overnight, while others go viral with no algorithmic resistance? Why do documentaries, songs, and talking points all sound like they were written in the same room? Because they were. Control the story, and you control the limits of imagination. You can make a nation believe it's free, while chaining it from within. But here's the key they can't hide forever. Once a man sees a structure, he can dismantle it from the inside, and that's why they fear you waking up. You're not just a viewer. You are a variable, a threat to the spell, a man who might just turn and face the architects with his eyes wide open. And brother, that changes everything. There's a reason they teach you to worship credentials, degrees, titles, uniforms, badges. It's not about knowledge. It's about obedience. Because once a man is trained to bow before authority symbols, he stops asking real questions. He becomes programmable. And when authority commits evil, he justifies it. This is a silent virus in every society. The elevation of position over truth. When that crime was caught on camera, what was the first thing they showed you? The uniform, the badge, the posture of power. And you were taught since childhood that those signs mean protection. But in that moment, they meant possession. Because that wasn't just a man in control. That was an institution taking what it believes it owns. On camera, in public, with zero fear of consequence. You think that was an anomaly? No, it was a flare, a signal. The kind the elite use when they want to see how far they can go. What will the people tolerate? What kind of trauma will they digest without resistance? And when the outrage comes, how easily can be channeled? That's what the system really studies. Not crime, not justice, but compliance levels. And the data came back clear. Most men will watch, they will share, they will rage, but they will not act, not truly, because they've been trained to defer to experts, to the proper channels, to ask permission before they even raise their voice. And that's exactly where the spell begins. Because the truth is this: every institution that claims to protect you has a mirror version that exists solely to control you. Education programs your perception. Law weaponizes obedience. Medicine sells you dependency. Media edits your emotions. And government harvests your trust like a resource. They don't need your agreement. They need your belief. Belief that the system still serves good. That justice will come. That change can happen from inside a machine designed never to change. But here's the fracture point. When a man no longer believes. Not in their lies. Not in their structures. Not in their symbols. But in his own sight. His own discernment. His own untamed knowing. Because when enough men break that spell, empires begin to shake. And that, brother, is why this truth is so forbidden. Wait for part 2. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.